6 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. If you don't have a seat, real quick, if you don't have a seat, we can't have you in the room right now. Otherwise, we're over capacity. Yes. Thank you all for coming. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you again for being here this evening. I need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And now we'll move on to announcements. Does anybody have anything? Any announcements? Okay. All right, we will move on to public input. Did everybody that wanted to speak sign up to do so? Okay. We'll start with Chelsea Pursley.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Chelsea Pursley, and I'm here tonight as a concerned parent and advocate for parental choice. This board frequently emphasizes the importance of parent choice, but actions often contradict those words. Recent decisions, such as denying supplemental curriculum proposed by teachers and denying mental health support for students, don't reflect a commitment to empowering parents, both of which required parental permission, allowing families to decide what is best for their children. Blocking these options doesn't protect parental choice, it limits it. As a parent, I've personally seen the benefits of mental health support offered within our district. My child has been able to access Heritage Health, and I am grateful for those services. Denying families access to these resources many parents wouldn't otherwise have, does a disservice to those who need it the most. Additionally, it often feels as though outside conversations are being had and decisions are being made prior to these meetings, leaving little room for meaningful dialogue. This dismisses the expertise and perspectives of our teachers and counselors who work closely with our students, understanding their needs better than anyone. Ignoring their input undermines the trust and collaboration essential to fostering a strong educational environment. Our students are diverse with unique needs and challenges. Some thrive with additional academic resources, while others desperately need mental health support. Denying these opportunities restricts families who are seeking the very things that could help their children succeed. I urge you to align your actions with your words. True parental choice means trusting families to decide for themselves and valuing the voices of our educators. Please reconsider your approach and prioritize giving parents and professionals the tools they need for our students. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the financial report. You guys have any questions?
Do we have any special anomalies in here?
Not this month.
One. It's not letting me look at my. So being that we're not quite halfway through the year, there's some line items where we've spent over half. Do we have plans for making sure that those don't go over budget?
Which line items are you referring to, Trustee Bean?
any line items that are over 50%.
I can give you a more detailed look at those. Some of them that are spent in full already or close to full are things that we have to pay up front at the beginning of the year. So I can definitely break those out for you in our next financial report.
Okay. I was mostly concerned about salaries and benefits.
Again, with I just didn't have enough time between the last meeting and this meeting, but I am working on revised financials to bring to you for the January meeting. I'm going to remove the encumbrances column and then add in that working budget that we talked about. That will allow us the flexibility to move some items around with the board's approval. But that'll come in January. I will make sure to detail on there what we're doing.
Dave?
I'm good.
I have nothing more.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Minutes of the previous meetings. Any conversation? Okay. Subcommittee meetings?
Nothing.
HR items? Anything on the consent agenda?
Nope. Move to approve.
Okay. I will second.
Second. Did you second?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were calling.
Yeah. No. And thank you for splitting out that BMO. That is so much easier to read than the old report.
You're very welcome.
I very much appreciate it. And I guess we're moving on to old business with the superintendent follow-up.
Trustee Bank, guys did.
Yeah, we gotta vote.
Oh. Oh, yeah. Hearing a motion in a second. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, now we'll move on to the superintendent follow-up. Any questions?
No, I appreciate the detail and the follow-up though.
Mm-hmm.
You're very welcome.
And we'll move on to the financial follow-up. None of these had links.
They're all attached.
You scroll down. Okay.
It's always.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I did away with my links so I could number the pages
Thank you.
appropriately.
Yes.
Are there any new developments on the Amaret thing?
We did hear back, so that's the second letter that's attached in my update. We did hear back from the bonds company. They would like us to pay them the remaining amount due to Emmerich Construction, and then they'll pay out the payment bond after that. We only owe $89,700, so we'll go ahead and cut that check once all of the subcontractors have made their claim, and then the bond will pay the rest.
They'll pay the subcontractors.
Yes.
Why are we waiting for all of the subcontractors?
I'm just waiting for an official notification from the bond company to release the payment to
Oh,
them.
okay.
So just following the legal process.
Okay.
So from our point of view, everything is complete once that payment is made.
Yes.
And it sounds to me we're very fortunate
That we had the payment bond.
that we had the bond in place and that our work was completed, because other people's are in.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there are multiple lawsuits in other states for the same thing, that the projects were not completed. So we are very fortunate that the work was done.
I'd just like to comment, I appreciate the CFO's attention to detail in this matter that saves us going forward, I think, in another project. So.
Mm-hmm. Trusting your gut.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Because that could have put us in the position that some other agencies are in now.
Exactly.
Work not being completed. So. Any questions? Anything else for
Nope.
Ms. Combat? Okay, let's move on to the facilities update.
Trustee Bean, I do have a typo on my facilities update.
Okay.
It should read 22-23 state safety inspections instead of 23-24.
The state did not do one last year. Their main person retired and they struggled to find somebody, so our buildings were not inspected.
Okay.
But the state inspector was on property
Yep.
over Thanksgiving vacation to do those for this year.
Okay, so we are getting them this year at least?
Yeah.
Okay.
They actually brought people out of retirement to come do the inspections.
Okay, whatever it takes sometimes.
Yep.
I can correct that though and get it to our board clerk if you would like.
Okay.
Overall, the inspections were pretty decent, and the only thing that kind of struck me is, if I recall correctly, the last time around, the item on iWash had come up several times before. I'm not sure why that's there in some instances, because some schools don't, in my judgment, have the kind of activity that would require that, but it's there.
But the custodians need it in case they
Yeah,
get, in case something happens there.
There's potential there, obviously.
Okay.
So anyway, what are we doing to take steps to resolve that? I guess?
Well, once we get the new inspection report, which we should get in the next month or so, then we will go through it and identify the things we need to rectify, and we'll bring that list to the board so that you're aware. There will need to be a conversation about where the funding for those items comes from.
Okay.
And could somebody please make sure you contact the state and let them know that we have a different contact than what is listed on these facility reports?
Yep, those were from 22-23.
It still should.
And she
Yep.
was still not here
Oh,
that year
perfect.
either.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
I think we actually had that same conversation in 22-23.
Alright. Any further discussion?
If I may, can I
Absolutely.
please introduce our new facilities director?
That he's going before the board
Right,
tonight.
if the board approves him.
But he is here tonight.
Yeah.
Tim, if you'd like to come up. Tim Haig has graciously accepted the offer of the facilities director position with board approval. He got to meet with our facilities team today, and I can let him introduce himself and
Give a little
Little background?
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Tim Haig. So my background, I got about 28 years in the military, 8 years active duty, 20 years reserves. In that capacity, I've been fleet manager, I've done congressional budgets for vehicles, facilities. I was an E9 chief in the Air Force, so I had about 200 people underneath me, so I'm experienced in leadership, mentorship, taking care of resources, things like that. In the last 15 years, I've been in construction, 6 of which I've owned my own company. I've ran 2 other companies. Was in asphalt paving, doing multi-million-dollar government contracts. Pretty extensive history in dealing with insurance claims, dealing with remodels, home extensions, tenant improvements, things like that. So that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years, and
You got family in the district?
I too, thank you. I have twins, a boy and a girl that are 8th grade now, and they go here to Lakeland Middle School. And I have a 9-year-old in 4th grade right over here in John Brown. All my kids are into sports. I'm into sports. I've volunteer football coach. I've been on the junior tackle board. Been very involved with my daughter in cheer, my kids in football. Boy and girl both play football. Girls wrestler, boys basketball. I'm in the community. I'm part of everything. I live here in town, so it's just an honor to be up here with you guys.
He has some certifications that I was excited about.
Oh, yes.
Yes, will you share those?
I will, yes. I'm a lead certified contractor, so I'm able to work on and train people to work in and around lead paint specifically. And I have to renew it, my certification, but I can also do asbestos testing, on-site testing, and take it to the lab in Spokane for evaluation, which would
Saves
probably
quite a
save
bit.
the district a lot of money because it doesn't cost, it's like $15-20 a sample, whereas the outside company, you could be a couple $100 to $1,000 for that survey report. Also have my water certification. I work with companies that deal with mold and things like that. So being around the insurance world, I've seen just about everything.
Okay.
He has an extensive skill set.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Ready to move on? All right. Let's move on to new business, our supplemental curriculum.
So I brought everything back from November. I wasn't here and it sounds like everything was tabled. I'm just going to remind the board that this summer I was asked to bring all of the Lakeland Middle School, Timberlake Middle School, all the middle school novel sets in front of the board. Some of those books had been grandfathered in prior to 2021 and was requested that we bring those books back up by title and get approval. So we made it through the middle school. I'm now working at high school. This list in November was the start of the high school books. The supplemental resources comments, the 3 books that had been denied, I think back in September or October, it was requested that I bring all of the comments that were included for those 3 books when they were tabled. So everything you're looking at is all the table items that we have tabled in the last couple of months. So I'm just looking for direction. Several of these books are books that have been in the district for a long time. Several of the high school teachers have used them for years. Remember, we do have parents, the teachers complete a syllabus that has a little synopsis of all of these books, and they do get parent permission for these books, including some of the 8th grade honors. Those are parent permission. So in addition to our process, we also have parents give permission for their student and child to read this book.
So it's an opt-in provision?
It is an opt-in provision.
And we've asked our teachers that if we have 3 or more students whose parents opt them out, that the teacher chooses a different book.
Oh.
Because we don't want to negatively impact several students.
We felt like the instruction would be compromised if you as a teacher if we had more than 3 students opting out, then you're trying to find an alternative, and so then the instruction as a whole was compromised. So that was another request. Again, parent permission, they fill out a form, and then if there's 3 or more, they choose a different book as the class.
I will move to approve the supplemental curriculum as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Does that include all of the supplemental resources comments of those 3 additional books at the bottom?
That was my intent.
Okay.
Which, wait a second. This is just the first page, right?
You have it's titled Supplemental Resources Comments, and those books are Speak,
Pay It Forward.
Pay It Forward.
There was one on here that had some concerns about.
The other one was the Fault in Our Stars. Again, Fault in Our Stars and Speak are specific to 8th grade honors classes. So it's not something that's widespread across 8th grade.
And they use it in lit circles. It's not even the entire class. The kids get to choose from a variety of books.
I just wanted to have clarity on if the motion included those 3 as well.
That was my intent
That was intended for a second.
on the second.
Okay.
Was there one you were concerned about?
Yeah, there was one with some concerns about drinking and inappropriate behavior on the bottom, but I can't find it now.
In the bottom?
In the comment section.
On the tabled or on the supplement, the top or the second one or the first one?
It's on the second one. Can't seem to find it. I can't find it. Oh, shit.
Are you rescinding your I vote?
No, I was
Okay.
just asking a question,
Okay.
but I can't find it anywhere, so
Okay.
I don't know what I was looking at.
I'll just stay up here since the next items are policy.
All right, moving on to policy. I'm glad you're here to talk because
So, if I may, for the drug
Absolutely.
and alcohol testing, we met with the administrators today to continue to work on our recommendation that we'll bring to the board at the workshop, the next workshop for potential cuts to the budget. And both of our ADs, Katie Walton and Matt Neff, felt like just cutting the drug testing was a good place to save some money. So that was one of the reasons I think that Trustee Grissom asked for the comments to come back. She wanted to look to see if it was something that people felt we needed, but just so you know, from their perspective, if we're going to have to make cuts, they felt like this was an easy place to cut some money.
so we had approved this policy and then it's coming back to just show the results of the, okay, so there's no action on this particular item.
Right.
Okay.
Trustee Grissom just wanted to see the survey results.
Okay.
The immunization requirements, it was just an update to make sure we were in alignment with current statute, so there was some minimal changes to that one.
And then payroll details,
Immunization.
we just,
She just mentioned
Yeah.
that was
just
to align
some
with
minor
statute.
tweaks to.
There's some new tests and there's just some date requirement changes, so we just made sure we were in alignment.
Okay.
Payroll details, this is a minor change, but we had a situation last year where the 28th of May fell on Sunday. Monday the 29th was Memorial Day, so people didn't get paid until the 30th of May, and some people had their house payment comes out on the 29th. So we just talked about ways to mitigate that, and so our recommendation and the change to this is that if payday lands on a weekend, we would just pay on the last work day previous to that. So the
That's what
latest
most
we'll
places
get
do.
paid is the 28th, which is our payday, and then if the 28th is on a Sunday, we would get paid on the 26th, Friday.
Hi, sorry, Brooke Cunningham, Director of HR. This policy also gets us in line with state statute in regards to payroll.
Okay.
Especially with our hourly staff.
Yeah.
You have to pay within a certain
Number of days.
number of
Okay.
days. Yep. Thank you, Brooke.
And then 9100 is all Jessica.
Well, it's just, again, aligning it with state statute, and increasing some of the dollar amounts, making it easier to understand.
So if you scroll all the way down, you can see everything in blue was ISBA recommendations. And then the things in red are just some language that we added so that it was clear.
I had a couple of questions on this one.
Okay.
It says the city limits. What city limits are we talking about? Are we talking about the city of Rathdrum, the city of Spirit Lake, the city of Athol?
Oh gosh, how I messed it
What page are you talking about?
It dropped my notation on a totally different spot. I gotta go back and. Acquisition of property under real property. It's on page 1 of 5.
Oh, for educational purposes, such a building site must be located within the boundaries of the city limits, unless by resolution of the board.
That was original language in the policy.
Do you want to bring this back and we can clarify more language
Yes,
around city
please.
limits?
Yeah, just because we're unique, I guess, in that
That
we have.
Multiple city limits.
Probably
Yes.
gonna need to go to the intent.
Right,
If that's part of
yeah.
statute, we're gonna have to go to intent to figure out what that means in our case, because as pointed out, we have several actual cities.
But we also have schools that aren't within city
And we have
limits
cities
that,
that are not.
so,
And
The boundaries of
I
the
wonder if we
district.
could just put it as boundaries of
Yeah.
the district instead of the boundaries of the city
if
limits.
that's acceptable, that's
It-
appropriate.
yeah, it just talks,
I don't see why that wouldn't be acceptable. It doesn't reference Idaho code there, so I think if you would like to make that change, I think that's fairly easy to do.
yeah.
Are you comfortable with us approving it if we make that to boundaries?
Of the district. I mean, we could almost strike that whole thing. It's just acquisition of property is approved by the board within the boundaries of the district. It's
Yeah.
really what it needs to say.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yep.
Okay.
If there's a
Go ahead.
legal question about that, I don't think there should be, but if there is, obviously it says by resolution of the board. you can add an annotation that when we approve this as a change, that satisfies the resolution requirement as well.
Okay.
Also on the conveyance of property, just real quick, there's 3 different categories. There's 1,000 or greater, less than 1,000, and less than 500. Should that middle one be less than 1,000 but greater than 500? Just so that it shows that middle, yeah. Because otherwise it implies that you have to do both for anything less than
Okay.
500.
Does anyone know why those 2 categories exist?
They are existing in the old
Statute.
policy, so the language wasn't changed, so we could pull up old statute and just see, or, you know, and see if that was in the language before.
Seems a bit redundant.
Mhm. So would you like us to wordsmith this a little bit better, take it back to policy, update some of that language? Yes? Okay.
Yes, please.
So somebody just needs to make a motion on policies then?
Mm-hmm. Any motions? Anyone?
Move to return 911 to the policy committee for revision.
I'll second. Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We need to approve.
5395.
Yeah.
Move to approve 5395.
Second.
And
3525?
can you do them in a lump group with 3525?
The immunization records and
3525.
and 5395,
Yeah.
both of them together?
Yeah.
Are you still good with your second?
Yep.
Okay. Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Alright, on to the emergency provisional.
So we had a music teacher that vacated the position at Lakeland High School, and so we've been on the hunt for a replacement. This gentleman has a PhD in music, was a music teacher in a different state. He let his certificate lapse, and so in order to renew his certificate in Idaho, he has to renew it in the other state. So basically he's gotta be in a program to take some additional classes to get that done. He's not 100% sure that he wants to teach long-term, but he's willing to help us out. So when Brooke spoke to the State Department, the recommendation was to go the emergency provisional for this year. And then if he does intend to stay, then we would do an off next year, and he would be enrolled in the program. And he came highly recommended by Mr. Sicilla.
Somebody local?
Yes, well, he is now. And he's right now in as a long-term guest teacher until we get the process done. And I did check in with some parents whose kids are in those classes, and they said it's night and day difference. So kids are enjoying music class at Lakeland High School right now.
Move to approve the request for emergency provision.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
So last month when I brought the middle school's winter schedules to you for athletics, the Lakeland Middle School's league had not finished basketball. So I have brought to you just Lakeland Middle School basketball schedule for approval.
Move to approve the Lakeland Middle School schedules for boys and girls basketball.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Dance team travel.
So this one, we brought a list of co-curricular travel for the board to approve earlier this year. Lakeland High School dance team was planning on participating in a different competition that was local. That isn't going to happen, and so for them to be able to compete now, they're requesting that they go to Meridian. So that's why it's coming later than the rest of them did.
Am I understanding correctly that we would have no obligation for costs for this trip?
Correct. They have, they've already fundraised. They were fundraising last summer,
Okay.
knowing that they were going to go to a competition. So.
Move to approve.
Second.
Hearing motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. 10-year plan.
Finally.
Sorry. It's only been 35 minutes, by the way.
No, she's saying we finally
I
are
finally
giving
got
this
it.
to you.
Finally got it.
It's like, man, I'm coming through this. Come on!
This has been a very fast meeting, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Bain, this is a 10-year plan that we've been working on. So it started with the state providing school modernization funds and quite a few items that we had to work through in order to receive those funds. Over the summer, a facility assessment was done for all sites in the district, all school sites in the district. That included the buildings and then their sites as well, so parking lots, grounds, etc. All of that information was input into the state's master planning platform, and then it spits out a report that gives us the replacement costs and when we should be doing it. The state's original intention for this money is for us to get our facilities from replaced or poor to good or perfect. They obviously do not give us enough money to do all of that for everything. So I anticipate that we'll utilize that $18 million within the first 3 years, and that's how we built this master plan, this 10-year master plan. We did work with Architects West at the board's direction to get this done, and it was a great conversation with him. We really focused on building safety. For example, we prioritized our electrical components in the buildings first, in addition to fire suppression. Because those are important. We had an incident at Lakeland Middle School last week where some wires melted together, didn't trip the breaker like they were supposed to. Thankfully it wasn't a terrible situation, but it was still just highlights the need to take care of our aging facilities. So I have included in here for your review and approval the recommended 10-year plan, and then what looks like to be the appropriate dollar amount we should anticipate to spend on these projects. The state's signature page that the board is required to sign that basically indicates that you agree that we'll spend the money appropriately, that we do not require job applicants to sign written diversity statements, that we meet the minimum instructional hours for students, that we use the funds in the manner that aligns with our mission and what's allowed under the House bill that this was approved under, that our school district leadership has watched the required documentation webinars, and I can attest that Lisa and I both have watched them. They're very
Riveting.
informative.
Oh yeah,
Informative.
word.
How many times did you watch them?
Multiple.
Yes, we went back and
Yeah.
we did.
And we're electing to take the money in a lump sum. If we take the money in a lump sum, we can use it for facilities. If we elect to take it annually, we have to use it first as property tax relief and then use it for facilities. Not a single district in the state elected to take it annually. Everybody elected to take it as a lump sum. And just attesting that you approved to the 10-year plan as proposed. And then the last portion of this is the output from the state's master planning platform that shows basically where things fall and what the recommended cost is if the building were to burn down to replace it. So it's a higher dollar amount on those reports.
And by signing this and approving this tonight, we're not locked into this is absolutely how we must spend these dollars. If as we start a project, something appears that becomes a higher need for safety, we can alter our plan and then we just report accordingly.
Because that was a question I had, whether you have an opportunity to amend it. as you go
Yeah,
forward.
we can amend, honestly, the state just wants to see that we've put some thought into this and that we're not willy-nilly picking projects, that we're actually addressing the items that need to be taken care of within the district that are the top priority. So that's what this exercise was. I don't anticipate that they even will have us go back into the system after this. It's more of we want to see that you put the thought into it and that it's appropriate. I do anticipate our new facilities director, once he is approved, will walk through the building and review the assessments that were done just to make sure that we're in agreement with the time frame and the evaluation, so that we can tweak this as needed. Obviously, that comes to the board for approval anytime we have any changes. The other important thing to note is if we can get this approved tonight, we will be in this round of funding. We have to have this submitted to the state by December 12th. So if we're able to get this submitted, we will get our funding at the end of this month and we'll be able to start accruing interest on it. If we wait, we will not be until the next round of funding, which is in February. So
Post Falls is seeing $75,000 a month in interest on theirs, which is significant, but so our plan is to not touch that money because the state is bonding for this, the interest. The state is bonding for this $1.3 billion of money that they're distributing to the schools, and they're going to pay for it with the levy or the lottery dollars that used to come to the district. They've held those back, and then the bond equalization fund that has been in place, they've held that back, and so those two revenue sources plus sales tax to make the bond payment at state level. If at any point in time the sales tax doesn't
really
generate
right,
enough.
thank you, that's what I was looking for, generate. They may come back to the districts and request a certain dollar amount from every district to help make that payment, and so we don't want them touching the 18 million. So we would save the interest for that purpose, and then at the end of the 10 years after the bond's paid off, then that's our money to use in any way we see
for
fit.
facilities.
Yeah.
For facilities.
For facilities.
Yes, in any way we see fit.
Yes. Yes.
So that's my recommendation, is that we set aside that interest revenue just so we have kind of that contingency fund. We're obviously not going to spend all 18 million this summer, but we'll have the opportunity to generate some interest revenue on that.
Have you done any kind of projection on what that interest would be first annual?
No, but I can.
Just a thought.
Can I answer any additional questions on the 10-year plan?
I don't have any problem approving it so we can get it underway as long as we have the ability to amend going forward. I do have some questions about some of the things that were outlined, but I don't want to get deep in the woods tonight. So.
Be happy to answer those anytime.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Go get your money.
Thank you. Thank you, and I know that was a lot of work, so thank you very much for the time and effort put into that.
Before we move to the next item, I apologize. Back of the room is having a very tough time hearing speakers. If you guys would mind speaking up, I think it would make it a little bit easier to hear in here and on the live stream as well. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so under discussion, budget considerations, we have been working pretty much nonstop since the levy election, trying to figure out the recommendations that we want to make to the board for consideration as we try to figure out how to reduce our budget. One of the things we started with, how do we change the way the district operates and looks, because we can't continue to do what we've been doing, and we no longer have the funding to support that. So kind of reimagining some things. So the first thing I just want to bring to the board's attention is when I look at our attendance, our enrollment for this year and look at rolling our elementaries up next year with no new kids coming in and nobody leaving. So obviously it's not perfect, but that's how we always kind of gauge where we are with staffing. When I do that, we are at just a little over 1,800 elementary students. So over the past, since COVID, every year our elementary numbers are dropping. Our secondary numbers are going up, which kind of is helping with our enrollment. But if you take that 1,800 and divide it evenly by 5 schools instead of 6, we would have 374 kids in each one of those 5 schools. So one of the things that we are suggesting to the board to consider is rezoning our elementary attendance to basically repurpose one of our elementary schools, and that will help us not have pockets where we have a classroom of 12 and we have to staff that, where if those 12 kids were in another elementary school and there were 4 classrooms in that grade level, you could put 3 in each classroom and accommodate those kiddos without having to add that staff member. So it helps us with some of the staffing. What we're looking for tonight is just direction from the board to at least start the conversation, because when we, after the last time we rezoned, I wrote a protocol that I brought before the board, and there are definitely some steps in there that we would need to get started on, including creating a committee with parents so that anybody who's interested in participating can have a voice in that process. And then once there are some kind of suggestions that we feel pretty good about, then we take those to schools for town hall type meetings with parents to share and to get feedback from people who can't participate on the committee. We want to look at each of the elementary schools and see what the impact is educationally to kids with regard to space, and then also financially with regard to transportation and some of those things. So it's not under action because it doesn't require action, but we are asking for some direction from the board to just open the conversation so that we can let our parents know that that this is a consideration right now.
I apologize to everyone for being late. It was unavoidable. Keep going.
Well, Lisa just gave us the explanation. We're at the district rezone conversation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. But please keep leading.
So Lisa is asking for permission, guidance on moving forward to rezone
Okay.
to 5 schools, 5 elementary schools instead of 6.
Okay.
And having that conversation with parents and the community because it does fall within the rezone protocol.
Okay.
To ensure anybody who wants to have a voice in the process is able to.
Okay. And I know that in the past you've mentioned that Jessica is involved in that.
She absolutely is, yes.
Okay, I do think it's paramount for her to do the first cursory glance to say, can we look at this, this, and that, to ensure that she knows how she's mapping the bus routes in the most cost-effective way, and then passing it off to all the stakeholders, sort of a, how do you see this? You know, give me pros, cons, whatnot. Because I think that has to be, she has to have the first say so that we are looking at the most cost-effective way to do this.
Yep, with all her little colored dots. She's really good at it. So, is the board okay if we open that conversation?
Well, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm going to ask the obvious question which will come, and that is, if you're reducing the number of elementary schools by 1, which is the one because your rezoning is depending upon defining that situation.
Right, and that's, I think, what Board Chair Thompson was alluding to, was that Jessica would look at which school is most cost effective and which options would be most cost effective with regard to transportation, and then that's at least our starting point. And then we would obviously each month we would bring to the board, this is what we're looking at, these are the considerations we've made, these are the meetings that we've had, so that you're part of that conversation along the way.
With respect to that, we don't have a lot of meetings to make these decisions. So I think there needs to be a little bit more proactivity instead of just a once a month, hope we can get together and powwow it out.
Are you talking long range?
No, I'm talking,
I mean,
your
protocol?
statement to Bob was just that, well, we have meetings, implying that my interpretation of that statement was we have a long period of time. We do not.
No, we don't have a
So
long period of time. So
I would
yeah, time is of the
advocate
essence.
for it to be more often, more consistent, so that we are actually getting, put the feet to the fire and get the
Yes.
solutions.
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't scheduled the meetings because I needed permission from the board to move forward in that direction.
Okay.
When I said meetings, I was talking about bringing to the board, your board meetings, your regular board meetings, all of the meeting notes and the conversations that we've had, so that you're staying in the loop if you're not attending those meetings.
I think it would be ideal for the information to come not just to the board meetings, but to the workshops.
Yes.
Because we need to have the information all along. It can't be just a one-off, here's our suggestion, please vote yes. We need an ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I think moving forward, the levy needs to be part of every time we meet, whether it's a workshop or a board meeting. Okay, so we will get that ball rolling. As part of this conversation, we talked about program reallocation. So depending on which school it is that we end up moving kids out of, this could look different. One thing, just so the board knows that I'm aware, if, for example, John Brown was the school that we moved kids out of, that building has to continue to be a school, or it reverts back to the city of Rathdrum. And so, so we have some ideas of ways to make sure that that happens, if that ends up being the school that makes the most sense. However, Jessica has shared with me that it doesn't make a lot of sense from a cost perspective to take a school that is predominantly a walking school and now start busing all those kids to different places. So all of those parts are part of the conversation, that if this whole, everything we're doing is in an effort to reduce the cost, not increase the cost. So, but as we talked about program reallocation, one of the things that we talked about is the board has been asking for the last 2 years for us to have a behavior program where our most at-risk behavior kiddos, who sometimes can be violent, can be in a classroom with people who are highly trained to teach kids replacement strategies for those big behaviors, and not have them in our general ed classrooms where learning is disrupted. So that's part of that program reallocation, is that part of this process would be that we look at the best placement for that program. And again, Jessica has to be part of that conversation because we're talking about transporting kids. So we have to figure out the best location for that. One of the things we did just learn, because what we were thinking was, for example, if it had been John Brown, that could be where that program was. But then Kelsey was on a director's call with the state of Idaho and was told, ironically, that day that you can't have a program like that in a building and not have any typically performing peers in the building in classrooms to be able to work alongside. And so it's going to have to be a school within a school, but our plan would be that Kelsey's team would all be housed out of wherever we're putting this program. So our 2 BCBAs, school psychs, all of the people who are most highly trained to work with our most at-risk kids. So Lynn and I actually started having this brainstorm when we were thinking about potentially reducing some of the supports in our schools when we have to start looking at staff that we might have to reduce, and leaving our really high behaviors in the classrooms didn't make sense to us. So we felt like as we're making these cuts moving forward that we need to make sure we're taking care of the classroom. So that's the why behind that. So any questions about the behavior classroom or program?
So what I hear you saying is, in order to establish a behavioral needs school, it would have to be housed with Mountain View.
Well, we couldn't put it with Mountain View because those are not same age peers. So the information we just got from the state is the elementary program would have to be a school within a school program. So it would have to be in a school where there are other elementary kids.
That's a speckled bird, Mary.
Yeah. So because they have to have opportunities to start to transition back after they've learned their replacement behaviors, they have to have opportunities to practice those, and you start with highly preferred activities like PE or library or something, lunchtime, but you have to have same aged peers to be able to do that. So, and we'll come with more detail. I just wanted to start the conversation because I didn't want to go down a road with some of these and have the board have concerns and we not go there. And I want to make sure we're focusing our energy where the board wants us to be focusing. So,
Is there a way within John Brown, because I know that we rezoned everything to grow its population, if it went back to it being a walking school, is the population enough for one wing that a behavioral school could be on the other wing? Do we know that?
well, if we're rezoning, so we have 370 kids, John Brown's, we talked today, whatever school we put that school in, we have to reduce the student population a little bit so that we make sure that we have the rooms that we need. So identifying the school has to be a first priority because as we have the conversations about rezoning, that has to be part of that conversation.
Well, even if it were considered to move up to Twin Lakes with the preschool, that's the only building location
so right now
for it.
Right, she's got 5 classrooms that we could utilize in that building for that program.
Okay, but I would think that a behavioral needs school, so to speak, would need a principal that has more focus on special education or behavioral needs or all of that, not so much just general population of the school.
Kelsey would be the principal of the behavior part of the school.
Okay.
And then, so, because that would be a lot to ask a principal to take that on. So that would be Kelsey's role.
Perfect.
Yes.
So we would have, though, someone qualified to manage it.
Yes. No matter where we put the school.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So a behavioral needs school needs to go in an elementary school with,
regardless of where we put it.
right, with, okay.
Yep. And so that has to be part of our planning. If the board is agreeable to, and I know you've been asking for that, so I'm assuming that you're agreeable, but I needed to bring it to you. That needs to be first and foremost as we're looking to identify a school that has to be part of the conversation when we talk about rezoning.
So your second proposal is contingent upon the first one?
Yes. Yep. And I'm not looking, again, not action tonight, just making sure that we're not way outside of where the board wants us to be as we start looking at possibilities. but we have to do something, we have to do the district has to look a little bit different for us to be able to operate at the high level we're used to operating on a budget that is significantly less than what we have, so.
Respectfully though, if we create a school within a school, and part of your other recommendation is to move Mountain View to a vacated building, we would then also be able to, if there are behavioral needs within the 6 through 12,
Secondary, yep.
house that
Yep.
as well in that building,
Yes.
not necessarily in, okay.
Yes. Yeah, because those would be same age peers.
Would we be able to, because the, I can't think of its name because it's never called by its name, it's called Mountain View. The 7th and 8th program for
Middle school academy, they would
okay.
also go over.
Would that be able to be grown to include 6th graders as opposed to just 7th and 8th? Okay. Do we have any idea, have we made any consideration in looking at what the district might potentially save by doing this?
We have not started down that path other than it helps with, I know it will help with staffing where we won't have the tiny little baby classes that we have to put a teacher in because you can't have, but then closing a building, you also save on, well, utility costs, heating, electric, those
Right.
kinds of things. So, yeah, depending on which building
Okay.
we use.
But we haven't even started to look at what that might look like.
Right. Because again,
Okay.
I didn't want to put a lot of energy into, these are big changes, and so I wanted to get them before the board first. The next item is enrollment, and that is just, we redid the form because, the formulas weren't accurate, before on the other sheet, and this gives you actual, it's basically the master schedule for secondary, so you can see how many kids are in each section, which gives you a better idea of class sizes. That was just a response to our class size review last month.
Just a general comment, what I'm observing is the class sizes are well done at this point. I don't see what you referred to as baby class anywhere particularly. There are a couple of situations at the elementary level where they're below 20, but if the bulk of the classes are between 20 and whatever the upper range is, that's where they should be. It's hard for me to visualize how we can take 300 or 400 kids out of one building and spread those across the other buildings and not have increases in class size beyond what we currently have as expectations. So, having said that, that's my reluctance to go down this path.
Right, that's part of the work that we have to do as we're looking at rezoning. What is happening historically for the last couple of years is we're moving large 5th grade classes up to the middle school, and we're bringing in baby kindergarten classes. So at Twin Lakes, they're down to 1 kindergarten classroom this year. Betty Kiefer, for the first time since Betty Kiefer opened, they have 2 kindergarten classrooms. They've always had 3. And so we're just looking at if we closed one of our school, or not closed, but repurposed one of our schools that is has 250, 270 kids, we're moving about 50 kids if everything was perfect, to the 5 different schools across 6 grade levels. So when you look at it that way, unless you have like big pocket somewhere, we didn't want to take anything off the table. We want to look
Yeah,
under
and I
every
understand
stone.
that. I appreciate the effort that's you put into it so far. But, you know, as you well know, you can redistribute kids pretty easily on paper.
Right.
But when it actually comes to moving them from one spot to another, based on their neighborhood and other kinds of things, it becomes a whole different kind of ballgame to deal with.
Within all of our buildings at the elementary level, given these classroom sizes, how many open classrooms are there in the buildings? Do you know off the top of your head?
I know Tiffany shared today that she's got 5 open classrooms.
Okay.
I would tell you that we probably don't right now have a lot of open classrooms, because when classrooms are not being used for a second grade classroom, they find other ways to use the classroom. So we have some schools where the counselor has an entire classroom instead of a small office space, and because they have an available classroom. So if we went through and looked at those kinds of things, every building has some.
See, and I think that's another component of a piece of the information we need, because, you know, if Twin Lakes has 5 empty classrooms and other schools have 1, 2, 3 empty classrooms that are being repurposed for utilization of whatever is fine, but we're not teaching and we're not educating in those classrooms because we don't have a teacher. I think that's pertinent information, because that may influence the ability to either do a behavioral school or not. I mean, because if it's just one school that has 5 classrooms, maybe that's not going to work. But if every building has 1, 2, 3, well, we need to look at that.
Yes.
Okay.
The next item is just the 4-day school week. I think, again, we are trying to look at ways to cut our budget without really impacting classrooms. Post Falls, this is their 2nd year as a 4-day school district. Kellogg started this year. Priest River is also 4 days. You can see on there that we spent almost $140,000 last year just on guest teachers on Fridays. And that's where Post Falls has seen some of their greatest savings, is the number of guest teachers needed for staff absences. And then they also saw a $200,000 savings on their Avista payments last year compared to the year prior, because they closed their schools down on Fridays. Kellogg is seeing a 2% increase in ADA so far this year. Now we're only, a quarter in.
2% from 90 to 92, or where? Because the data I saw, we're already at 95 or above. And I'm going to tell you that if you're 95 or above, you're in heaven, because it's not going to get a whole lot better than that.
Yeah. Post Falls didn't see that same thing, but they learned, they made a few mistakes last year that they're rectifying this year. One of those was on the weeks where Monday was a holiday. They were having kids come on Friday, but the kids got very used to not being at school on Friday, and so nobody was showing up, especially at the high school level. So that was kind of a hit to their ADA. But I think we could save somewhere between $300,000 to $500,000, well, $300,000 to $400,000 in savings, and then potentially increase our revenue from the state a little bit through ADA, possibly.
Well, let me see if I can walk through this a little bit. Based on what you outlined so far, the school that would be closed would be Mountain View. Would not be utilized at all. So it's pretty easy to look at the utility costs of that building and see what your savings would be. I don't think it's probably in the range.
Well, I would tell you, when I talked to Ken Harvest, who's a part of our facilities group, he said that Mountain View actually is one of the, because of the big boiler there, it's actually one of the least expensive to heat. Buildings like John Brown and some of our older buildings, the buildings in the 60s are with a lot of electric, are very expensive. And so if every single school was closed on Friday and we didn't allow Park and Rec in, we didn't allow anybody in on Fridays and the building was truly closed, which is what Post Falls did. That's where they saved the $200,000. And then we also looked today, we spent a lot of time looking at what a schedule might look like, because what I wanted to be able to talk to the board about is I don't want to create a situation where we have little people in school until 4:15. That you don't get good instruction that late in the day with kindergarten, first, second graders. So if we did a 4-day school week, that, in my mind, that would require us to move to single routing for buses. Otherwise, our little people are going too late. And the elementary school day would start at right around 8 o'clock and get out at 3:30. That would be their day. Secondary would.
So their day actually would be
about
7 to 4:30?
The teachers?
No, I'm talking about kids.
No, they would start at 8 and they'd get out at 3:20.
If they get on the bus at 7,
get on the
and
bus.
they didn't get up.
So that's a long day for kindergartners and first graders, even second graders. You know, they fatigue pretty soon at that rate. That's a tough call.
And that's the schedule that Post Falls, we didn't even look at Post Falls' schedule, we just sat down today with the admin team and looked at instructional minutes and how to get the instructional minutes. It would require us, I think we got to the point where it would require us to add 1 week of school. So we'd go 1 week later into June to make sure we were getting all of our minutes in. So that's right now kind of really rough numbers for the schedule. And then the next item on there is.
Hold on a second.
Yes.
I want to go back to the kindergarten qualm.
Uh-huh.
The state still only funds half day. Isn't that correct for kindergarten?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we need to make some considerations there as well, because we're paying for full-time for kindergarten.
Right.
We're only receiving funding for part-time.
We actually are getting funding our people are fully funded by the state, our kindergarten teachers. So we get, through the SBA, we get their half. But then Governor Little increased the literacy dollars specifically to fully pay for kindergarten teachers, because we couldn't get the legislators to make full day kindergarten a priority and fund it in that way. So we don't use any general fund for our kindergarten teachers, other than, the SBA, but the other half is literacy dollars. And you can only use the literacy dollars for personnel, K-3, for half of a day, because they don't spend the entire day teaching literacy, and then or programs. But we don't have almost $1 million in programs. I think we get like $700,000 or $800,000 in literacy dollars.
Okay. I guess, but where I'm going with this is, respectfully, if we are going to consider a full day school week, I would like us to look at the kindergarten program specifically because of how it is funded. And I hear you saying we're taking literacy dollars to make sure that those teachers are funded, but we may need to take those dollars to make sure first, second, and third is also funded, given the shortfall that we're coming to. And with the consideration that putting, 5 and 6-year-olds in that sort of an environment, I realize, then you got first grade and you don't have a choice, but kindergarten you do. So let's acknowledge that and maybe look at how a potential different schedule may work for kindergarten, what the pros and cons, what the pitfalls might be, because you are looking at a busing situation,
Right.
but we need to consider that. We're not required to do full-time kindergarten, but there are advantages, I'm not gonna deny that. I just think we need to look at what the best solution is for the entire situation.
You know, I would agree that we put everything on the table and take a look at it, but you mentioned one of the problems with half-day kindergarten, and I'm looking at Jessica, because somewhere during midday, those kids have got to be transported.
I understand
Right
that.
now, which you're really talking about added transportation costs in that. You know, so it's a trade-off that we have to look at.
Sometimes you gotta
Possibly.
break a few eggs
Maybe.
to make an omelet, though. Sometimes you have to spend some money to save some money. So
Yeah,
it may
true.
cost us more in some places to be able to reduce
In others.
expenditures elsewhere.
Save a dollar, spend a dime, or spend a dime to save a dollar.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't look at it, we don't know.
Exactly.
We
Yeah.
don't have the information and we don't have the answers.
Yeah.
And I would much rather know that first, second, and third is secure financially, not necessarily that, you know, we're making sure we have full day kindergarten, because we can have 3/4 day kindergarten. I mean, we can look at what the options are.
We will look at it and then at least bring to you the pros and cons that we
Okay.
see, and you may see others that we don't.
Perfect.
I would say on all of these proposed items of a pros and cons list
Potential cost
with
savings.
dollar
Mhm.
Yes.
amounts for each.
Okay.
And the sooner the better.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then finally, the modified workday. So one of the recommendations from when we first did our brainstorming with the admin team was to look at the COVID schedule that we ran. But when we did that, the state must have made some concession with regard to instructional hours, because we ran a very much shortened day, and then the teachers had their preps afterwards, so the day wasn't so long. So when we're looking at modified workday schedule in conjunction with a 4-day week, where we have to increase the length of the day to about 7:30 to 3:10 at the high school level and 8 to 3:30 at the elementary. We're not sure that that will work very well for teachers to go that full time and then have their prep at the end of the day, because if they're getting out at, the kids are getting out at 3:30 at the elementary school and they have a 35-minute prep that they need, we're at 4:05, and it doesn't give us really any time after school to hold IEP meetings or staff meetings or some of those things that are logistically necessary. Post Falls does have their staff coming in on one Friday a week for collaboration and professional development.
One Friday a week.
A month. Sorry, one Friday, yes, one Friday every week.
I
No.
go in one Friday every week too. And I don't have any off.
One Friday per month. But one Friday per month isn't enough time to be able to do all the IEP meetings. Like, you can't save all of that for that one day. So as we were kind of talking today, the modified workday works if we're staying in a 5-day schedule. And the only reason we even really started talking about it was when you look at a modified day, what it gains us is everybody is teaching all day long, so we don't have to have extra staff to cover the periods when people are on prep. It allows us to reduce staff more easily and maintain class sizes. So that's why we were looking at it.
At the secondary level, if you went to that model, doesn't that complicate your staffing issues? Because, let me see if I can throw out some kind of an example here. You have 2 science teachers. Right now, they teach 5 classes and have 1 prep period. The prep periods go away, so they're left with the 5 classes.
6.
So they would then have 6 classes. But if there are only 10 to start with, does one have 6 and the other have 4?
Well, that's where your endorsements come in, so you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at, is that your
They
staffing
may not-
becomes much more complicated.
Yeah, they may not be teaching each 6 periods of physical science, for example.
Yeah.
But you may need a couple of periods of chemistry, a couple of periods of physics, and so you just have to look at, we did it, that's what we did for COVID, it's exactly what we did. It took some work to get that scheduled, but the principals were definitely concerned about if we go to a 4-day week and have longer days, that we wouldn't have opportunities to have the meetings we need to have, so. So anyway, that's another option that we were looking at. So when we have the board workshop, the goal would be to have all of this information for you so that you can really consider what you think is in the best interest of the district.
We do need to understand what the cost savings would be, again, by going to a modified workday schedule, either on a 4-day or a 5-day. I think that's significant knowledge to have.
And then the last item.
Before you,
Yep.
so I know I've talked to you about this, but bringing, there's several programs for Saving Energy, Renew America School Program, Efficient and Healthy School Program, Solar for Schools, that's Idaho program.
Can you email those to me? 'Cause I'm writing them down, but you're
Yeah.
reading quickly.
And then Energy Wise program, though, so there's grants and everything to upgrade our schools, save energy. And then also, since Tim's here, and hired on, he can start looking into government surplus vehicles and get stuff for free. Just, you know, and Tim, oh, you didn't meet him?
Are you,
He
they introduced
hasn't.
him.
He
We'll
hasn't.
tell you later.
He's not.
We would approve an executive.
I was gonna say, is it supposed to happen until executive
It-
session?
No.
Okay,
It
good.
They just
I just introduced us, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Alright.
So one of the things Dave's talking about is putting solar panels on our schools and generating
Sweet.
our own energy basically. So just looking in, and there are grants
Good.
for schools, so we just need to look into some of those
Okay.
to cut down on costs.
Perfect.
I think
I hope it's better,
K-Tech,
hopefully better than the residential ones, because the residential ones don't pay off that well.
I think K-Tech runs off, they actually make money and sell it back to the Vista, or Kootenai.
That's good.
Yeah. So we'll at least look into it and bring that information to the board.
But how much is our snow removal contract? I forget.
We budgeted $135,000.
Right, so if we got some surplus vehicles and put our plows back on there and did it ourselves, that would save some money too.
So when you talk about surplus vehicles, is that like from the government? Where
Yeah, they transfer them.
State surplus.
You can go government too, as long
Well,
as
you
you're,
can, but most often it would be state surplus.
but yeah, they just transfer the vehicles over to our account free. You might have to pay for transportation, but
it's a lot cheaper than buying a new.
yeah.
And then the last item, the board had asked us about digital curriculum, and so Dr. Pasley put this sheet together that shows, and it's not all curriculum. Some of it is our student information system and learning management system, but you can see what comes from the general fund and what comes from other funds. So there really are very few that are coming from general fund, but we could move Skyward out of general fund and over to
If you
state
did that,
technology.
it's less than $10,000, about 10,000.
Yeah, so.
But it's about $191,000 that are expensed for digital licenses. It wasn't subtotaled, I just ran through it. That's a lot of dollars on digital licenses.
our state technology fund, we can only use that for either hardware or software for technology.
No, I understand that. I don't need it explained away, but I just think it needs to be validated that we're spending $191,546.35 on digital software for education. I realize the money's coming from various pots, but that's still a lot of dollars.
The one that is the most expensive is Skyward. That's our student information learning management system, so it's
Right.
the grade book. Our finances all are in there, and we are required to have a learning management system and a student information system, so.
Right.
But we could potentially take that out of general fund and put it somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. You can keep running the meeting.
Oh, thanks.
Before, excuse me, before we leave all of this that I'm talking about, essentially what you had laid out, I apologize, I have a bit of a cold. But I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we have not yet taken off the table rerunning a levy, albeit maybe a different levy than the one we ran before. So that we're not giving any illusion that that's out of the window here.
My plan, when we have our work session, is to bring to the board, an idea of what the district would look like if we did cut the full 9.52.
And that's kind of the worst case scenario
right?
we're looking at.
And then if you wanted to run a $3 million levy, here are things we could add back. You might look at it and say, we don't want to add those things back, we'd rather add these things back. I mean, that's the board's prerogative, but just to give some ideas and options is kind of the way that we're looking at bringing
And
you
that's why we
information.
need dollar amounts on everything.
Exactly. Exactly. So
On top of the fact, with that 9.5 million, I'd really like an understanding of what that $6,500,000 in wages and benefits, what departments that covered. Because we can't answer that question, and that really bothers me. Because, I mean, I've gone through our budget, I've mapped it out, and I haven't gotten it sent off to the rest of the trustees. I don't even have it on this system, it's in my other system. Of our wages and salaries and benefits and all of that. Because it was asked of me, what was our plan if it didn't pass? We have no plan. So if we go to run another supplemental levy for even a lesser dollar amount and it doesn't pass, what is our plan?
that's why I'm bringing
So
to you
that's why-
That's what you heard tonight.
Yeah, that's why I'm bringing this is what it looks like if we have to cut 9.52 million out. So there is a plan, because
Right.
Jessica will have to write 2 budgets
Mm-hmm.
because the election date is
Correct.
May 20th. And
Right.
she has to submit to the press that Friday before Memorial Day.
Right.
So we will for sure have what is the plan, and again, we'll have listed out for you how to cut 9.52 million. You might want to substitute things,
Mhm.
so we'll have our pencils as sharp as we can to make sure we can give you numbers associated with things that might be more appropriate from the board's point of view than what we have in there. And so, but that's our intention when we have the work session, is to provide those options so that we can go through those and you have a really clear understanding. And then depending on which direction the board wants to move in at the January board meeting, because we're going to have to make some decisions pretty quickly if we're going to run a levy, because the ballot language has to be written and then approved and sent to counties and things.
Right.
So speaking of work session, I did ask to have this item on there. I'm having shoulder surgery tomorrow. The earliest I'm going to be released back to work will be when we come back from Christmas vacation. because my pre-op appointment with my surgeon isn't until the 23rd of December. So I feel really strongly that that I need to be able to be at the meeting. I also feel strongly that our CFO needs to be able to be at the meeting. On December 18th, Jessica's daughter has a band concert, and we have elementary schools that are holding Christmas concerts, which impact whether or not parents, they're going to have to choose if they want to come and participate in this or they want to attend their child's events. So I am respectfully requesting that we hold the work session, so our board meeting, we come back to school Monday, January 6th. Our board meeting is Wednesday, January 8th. So I'm wondering if it would be possible to hold the work session on Tuesday, January 7th, so that the information is fresh, and we can have some possible agenda items built in based on the work session work for the board to make some decisions. So that's why that's on there.
How will we have things built into the agenda if we haven't had the work session? The meeting's the 8th.
Right, but can we have on the agenda possible action item, a decision about running the levy? Because we have to make the decision in January.
So what other financial information are you coming to the work session with aside from the items that we just talked about?
We're gonna have this is what it looks like to cut 9.52 million, and these are 3 options to run levies that are less than the 9.52 but kind of stair step, so that you have something to look at and make some decisions about. Or we do the regular board meeting on January 8th and hold maybe a special meeting specifically to talk about the budget and make some decisions based on the work session, and do that the following week.
I could do it either way, whichever way works out most convenient.
I still think we should have a workshop before that. Just so people can get their ideas out there. I mean, if we don't have everything, we don't have everything, and we'll just work from that meeting forward. You know, we can move it to a different date, but just keep it in December.
I won't be here.
No, I know, but people can still get together and hash out some ideas.
When we initially brought up the 18th, you announced at that point in time you wouldn't be able to be here. So the meeting was set for the 18th with the understanding that you wouldn't be present. And while I do understand why, I think that it may not benefit us to just keep waiting and waiting and waiting. I mean, my frustration was your intention wasn't to bring this stuff to this meeting because you weren't going to be at Wednesday's meeting. So we moved the meeting to Monday night so that you could be here to present your information. I just, the situation is critical.
I know, and time sensitive, and I understand that.
Right, and by you wanting, once again, I feel like we are, again, if we move the meeting date till like right before the meeting, but then you come to the meeting in January, but then you want the language for the ballot. I mean, it's just, once again, it's push, 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 push. When we were trying to do this as effectively as we can to make sure the community understands we need their input, we want their input. And aside from, constantly being told, please rerun the levy, the reality is when I was asked by a high school reporter, what was the backup plan if the levy failed, and had to sit there and say, well, the backup plan is always rerun the levy, that's not effective business. That's not great leadership. We need to understand more about how we can do what we need to do when the belt needs to be tightened. And I understand why you want it moved, and I respect that we've got Christmas concerts, and I respect that, band concerts and all that. I've missed several things for my family because of these meetings. But And I came tonight. Honestly, I would have loved to have not come, but I'm here. So, that being said, if we can pick a different date in December, understanding that you won't be here, we can still make it semi-productive. Instead of just saying, nope, we're gonna wait until January and then again be pushed again. At least that's my opinion. Bob can do whatever. He says he's fine with however we do it, so. Randy, what would you like to see happen?
I don't know how effective we would be on the 18th. What information can come forward in 9 days? What information can we have for to work on, to talk about, to discuss?
At the last work session, we asked for information, and we asked for building budgets, and we asked for all sorts of things. So I don't know if that information can come forward.
We have the building budget.
We what?
We have a building budget. It's in the data that we've been provided.
How they're cutting down, how they're going to minimize their budgets for this next year. We've got that information.
No, we've got what
well, that was
they
the
are.
information. What we asked for was what are the buildings, what can they reduce? Because I know that some of the buildings this year did do a significant reduction and others were not able to.
Right.
So we asked for the buildings at that level to say, this is what we really can do, and we haven't been provided with that information.
Well, I can tell you,
Okay.
if you don't have the $9.5 million, they get no building budget. That's what it boils down to. Pretty clear. You can't go to $9.5 million without bloodletting.
Do we know what it's going to cost to pay to play? Because we need to cut that out, because that was levy dollars that
That's
we
right.
can't use.
Yeah.
We need to cut $1 million at least from transportation. How are we going to do that? Because that was on the supplemental levy. That needs to come off. The one question that we haven't been given an answer for is the $6,500,000 that pays for salaries and benefits, but we don't know where. And that's what one of the questions that I've asked.
Divide that by $100,000, and that'll tell you how many
Bob.
certified staff we're talking about, and classified are about 2 for 1.
Why does it have to be certified staff when
No, I
classified
just said-
staff has
I just-
increased over 100%? We've had such a significant increase in classified staff, significant. So why does it always have to be the teachers we cut when the
It doesn't.
teachers are the ones that are teaching the children?
It doesn't. I just tried to say, if you want to go to classified, it's about 2 for 1, so figure 50,000.
Chair Thompson, we have put quite a bit of work already into the cuts. We've met with the admin team a couple times already. We're meeting with different departments. We have a document that's been prepared that's sitting out about $11 million right now for cuts across the district. They're not all personnel. They're not all teachers. In fact, quite a few of it is not teachers. So the work is being done. I want to be very, very clear that the work is being done. We have things outlined. We have something ready, but whether or not it's appropriate to present right now, I'm not really sure. For the pay-to-play question, figuring it out today based on the number of students that are playing high school sports, it'd be about $1,800 per student for pay-to-play. To fully fund athletics. $1,800 per student that plays. That they can play as many sports as they want. They have a one-time $1,800 fee, but that would be the cost.
Okay.
The $6 million that we requested in the levy, I am right there with you. I was not here when positions were added, but I can tell you, you can look at it multiple different ways.
Okay.
You can look at it as far as, we can say that it's a portion of everybody's salary,
Okay.
or you can look at it as back to when that levy was passed, the different positions that are in there. The document that we built that has the $11 million worth of cuts in it includes those positions. We added benefits to our bus drivers. We added different positions, so that we added halftime admin assistants. There's a lot of things that we did prior to me being here that we're going back and pulling to make sure that we're presenting that appropriately. But to say who the $6 million applies to directly, I don't have that outlined.
Okay.
It's just, I wasn't here, and also it's really difficult because you can look at it multiple different ways.
Exactly.
So, yes, ideally, we would have positions that are outlined to it. Absolutely. But it did go to pay for additional teacher salaries. It did go to pay for additional benefits. It did go to pay for more classified staff. It's being used appropriately. It's just that you can't line item it to an individual unless that's the intention at the start of that money.
But in the document that we share with you, we can highlight potential positions. We can go back to first levies with Dr. Meyer and just this is the allocations, and so it's not actually people, it's really positions, and we can show you and highlight that and separate it out so that you see this is, you know, in 2020 this is what we added, in 2022 this is what we added, so that's all really clear in the document that we have created.
Okay.
We are outlining pros and cons as well. As Trustee Jones said tonight, when you start going down one rabbit hole, it has other impacts. So we're doing our best to make sure that we're outlining every pitfall, which is what is taking a lot of time. Our admin team has been absolutely amazing in coming to the table and bringing their ideas and talking through the ideas that we had come up with as a district team as well. The work is being done.
Well, I'm not implying the work isn't being done at all.
Yeah. It's just getting the information out.
When we set the December 18th meeting date, it was with the understanding that I believe it was Mrs. Babakwa that had said that each school could sit down and do the work and leave it to the professionals. The professionals are working. We just don't have that word out to everybody yet because we don't know what it is either. So if we don't have anybody to present ideas and thoughts and numbers to us on the 18th, I just see it as spinning wheels. So I would propose that we move it out to when we would have admin and staff to be here.
And I can present too, they moved the band concert to the 17th.
She just informed me of that, so I didn't know.
I would have been here either way. But.
Okay.
Lynn and I are working side by side, so.
Okay. I'm good with doing it on the 18th. Leaving it on the 18th then.
I just think some of the community members want to be involved, so we can have back and forth.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that they definitely
And
want that.
they want to get going. That's my concern.
That's fine.
So just for clarity specific to the 18th, the document that we're creating just really has each line item. It has the dollar amount. Obviously it's approximate because until you start really plugging in people's names, we're looking at pros and cons and then notes of like whatever that ripple effect is. So if you make this decision, this is the, you know, potential causation of whatever that, you know, next steps are. So that's kind of how we're envisioning. It's just a laundry list. It's not, we're not prioritizing per se. This is what 9.5 would look like. Here's anything and everything. One of the things the admin team met today, we're going to meet again on Wednesday, really looking at if we made this decision, because this is another piece of could we live with that? What does the landscape of our buildings look like if we were to make that decision? So like for instance, we spent an hour talking about pay to play. We reached out to multiple districts that have started down this road. They've done some type of hybrid model. So we've been trying to just look at, okay, if we don't do, if it's $1,800, like what's the variation of that? What could we live with?
Right.
How does that help our community? So we're, you know, the same thing with, we look, you know, armed guards is on the list and our SROs. So what does that look like? So here's some variations with the idea that we're giving you as much information as possible. What we don't want to have happen is 2 months down the road, something happens specific to, you know, sports or specific to a classroom, and then we didn't see those foreseeable outcomes. And so we're trying to just really think about anything that could have a ripple impact and how that impacts your decision, so you have everything when you make that decision. So that is part of the reason we are looking at everything. We said there are no bad ideas. We do have, all of the departments have sent us their ideas. Some of them are pretty common themes, but we can share that with you. And part of the work on Wednesday will be just making sure that everything that is represented in their individual teams is then represented on our spreadsheet. So, you know, again, we're bringing all suggestions to you, and then ultimately you guys will make that decision. We do want to kind of look at some options and just say, here's some recommendations. But ultimately you'll see what the 9.5 potentially could look like, and we're going to give you a laundry list that actually would probably be more than that, but at least then you have some variations of decisions to make.
The other
If
thing,
that's if that works for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
the other thing we're adding to that is the buildings impacted by each of those decisions, just so you can see if it's heavily elementary, heavily secondary, where the district office, how that plans out. The goal with this is once you review that and give some direction, that we would come back similar to the budget hearing, not the budget hearing, but the special meeting that we had on the budget, where you could pick and choose and determine the dollar amount. So that discussion that we'll have with you with that document will lead to that kind of pick and choose spreadsheet, where you can see what items you put together in the dollar amount.
How it will
Yep.
affect.
Okay.
So if that works, if there's any other suggestions, but that's kind of how we're envisioning.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And our principals did, we did ask them to go back and meet with their staff and give the staff an opportunity to provide their ideas and brainstorm, so they have submitted those to us, and we're making sure that they're showing up in some way, so.
Perfect.
So then the meeting on the 18th stands.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything else to discuss regarding? All right, quarterly Heritage Health data.
We currently only have one therapist, so the number of students being seen is small.
Any further discussion? No. Okay. All right, LEA update.
So,
I asked for this to be brought down into discussion. Prior to the previous administrator liked to do our board meetings as presentations. And one of the presentations that would be given is from the LEA. I asked for it to be a discussion item because Lisa wanted it to be a report that was presented. And I just didn't feel that was appropriate to just all of a sudden stick it on the agenda. This is our business board meeting. We're supposed to be conducting business. So I don't know if you all want to go back to having the presentations, having the LEA present. That's a decision we need to make as a board, not just me saying yes, do it, or no, don't do it.
prior to the previous superintendent, the LEA president would each month just give a quick update to the board about things that were going on with teachers, just so you're aware of kind of how the teachers are feeling about things. Typically pretty positive, the comments. It wasn't a presentation.
It was when Becky was
Right.
there.
Yeah, prior to that. Prior to Becky, it was just basically a public comment, but they had a spot, and so it was just built into the agenda. So Jason had asked about that, and told him I would ask Michelle, and she thought the board needed to weigh in. That's why it's there.
It doesn't have to be every meeting. I was just wondering, because I was asking Lisa.
Jason, could you go to the
Yeah,
podium
sorry.
and just introduce yourself? Thank you.
Apologize. Jason Bradbury, I'm the LEA president. As I was saying, it doesn't have to be every meeting, but when I was talking to Lisa, I was just asking her, just as an inquiry based, if the LEA does want to address the board, do we have to go through the public session even though we are a part of the school district and everything, or can we just be allowed to, could I get a hold of Lisa or the clerk of the board and say, I'd like to give an update, and then I just be part of the agenda instead of having to do public comment each time? It's kind of how it used to be. We used to just do public comment.
No, not public comment.
Or not public, excuse me, not public comment, just an address to the board. It was never any big glitzy presentation, but it was just, if an issue arises that we needed more district communication on or board communication on, we would say that.
I certainly have no problem with taking that approach. I don't have any problem with other presentations. Some group from the school thinks it's appropriate to shine the light on them. Happy to have them.
Well, we typically have had like the summer program that runs, they will come and present, but that's kind of we want that input. So I suppose if there's something you need to bring forward for the board's information, then it would be appropriate to ask to be placed on the agenda.
I think you could do that just through the clerk.
Yeah.
Or
And like I said,
through
it
the clerk or
it won't
Lisa.
be every time, but I know like our LEA group, we have a leadership team as well, and we've been creating a list of budget cuts as well, and you know, it'd be nice if, you know, we could have, you know, some of that, you know, that would be an example of where we could give some input if we needed to, or if you had questions about something we delivered to you, then we could address that at that time or whatever. But just more or less like that.
Just opening that.
Yeah, just kind of opening the door instead of just making it a public session, 3-minute type deal. I mean, it probably won't take longer than that anyway, but.
Yeah.
We'll put the stopwatch in there.
Yeah.
Give him 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then if I could have just a real quick suggestion on the community workshop. Generally what I've seen work very well in community workshops before is if, I know last time we were trying to pass the mic and Lynn and I were running all over the place. I don't know if we have the capability, but it would be really nice wherever it's at, if you could have 1 or 2 podiums set up, each with a microphone, labeled 1, 2, and 3, and then whoever is leading the meeting, Chairman Thompson, you could just address, you know, whenever there was, you know, a time for public to speak, you could say, okay, podium 1, and then people that wanted to speak, they could just line up at the podium. And then you would know that they have public comment, and then you could address them when you felt the need to do that. It just kind of works a little bit better that way instead of having people run all over. You could probably even do it with 2. I don't know how large the group's going to be, but I think that's just a good suggestion to maybe clean it up a little bit so that it's a little more organized.
Well, typically at our workshops, I mean, it's a roundtable discussion.
Right.
Everybody's at the table.
It's a little smaller, more
So-
private.
Well, and I don't know if it's just private or people don't care to come. I don't know. But yeah, this is significant, and we want everyone to have a voice to throw out suggestions, etc. So I get what you're saying, and I think that's a good option. I just don't want it to be perceived as it's now a formality that they have to go to the podium to have a voice.
I think you
But
can set
we'll
those
figure-
parameters up or something
yeah.
in the beginning and just let them know that
Yeah.
if they're going to share, just walk to a podium instead of having to raise a hand or stand up or whatever.
True.
You know, just trying to help make it a little easier.
No, thank you, and I appreciate
And
that.
then last thing, sorry, if you could maybe think about maybe an change in venues for future board meetings, just because I don't know how you feel, and it's if you like the more private context, and I just hate having to turn people away, and I think anytime we're dealing with, you know, levy failures or budget cuts, or, you know, we have RIF policy coming up and everything, but just maybe a change of venue for the next few times so we can allow all our patrons to come in, because I do think that we did hear from a lot of community members as well as teachers that a lot of people weren't informed, and now we're having people come to these meetings that are wanting to be informed. Not that they can't watch the video, but they want to be a part of it. They want that live. They want to help, and maybe even sign up to speak in public as well. And then, you know, I just hate turning people away. So if maybe the board can consider it a change.
We did.
Just
I
one.
asked before we started, so.
Thank you. Sorry
Thank you.
to take your time.
Sorry.
You're good. But and as we go through all this, I know you guys said it a million times. We say it. We would not be here if it weren't for the kids. So obviously, it seems like every budget thing that we've already talked about, there's been red flags or snags based on kids, right? It's going to affect kids in a negative way. So let's don't lose sight of that as well. And that's why I was happy when Trustee Jones said, the possibility of rerunning the levy could still happen. And then, but I think it's very wise to check our budgets and our spending and tighten our belts if we have to, or if there's things that we're overspending. That's very diligent of the board, and I appreciate that as well. And I think maybe we can do the best of both worlds. But
We have to.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason. Alright, social studies agenda.
Me again. So I'm just bringing the agenda back up to you guys. We're still, if you remember, last year we looked at social studies, we looked at K-12. Then at the end of the year we went to a kind of a 9-12, possibly a 6-12 model. We are still kind of working through, we spent a lot of time just looking at the material, making sure we were vetting it. We actually met again tonight and are kind of finalizing our rubrics. We're looking at alignment, making sure that the new standards were updated at the end of April of this last year, and so making sure that everything is in alignment. So in January I'll bring the rubrics to the team. We'll look at everything. We'll look at the student survey feedback. We'll look at community members that participated in an observation, and then hopefully bring a recommendation to you in February. I am asking for what would be a 1-year subscription, 5-year, digital, no consumables. I want to bring all options to you so you guys can make some decisions as far as the dollar amount. So.
Is this based on the assumption the dollars will be there?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but I know we've had a lot of adoptions, but this is the last one. Then all of our core content will have updated material. This is kind of the last subject area that needs to, it's been a long time since we've adopted a new program. So part of our work, we met as a middle school team for the first time since I've been in the district of looking at vertical alignment. We have another meeting scheduled to do with the high school, so we're just making sure all the standards are covered, everybody has what they need. How does this new potential program fit into that? So we're doing a lot of great things around social studies. I'm excited.
Well, thank you for the work that you're putting into it. Appreciate it.
Handbooks.
So just each year we bring back to the board our handbooks so that you can just kind of refresh your memories what we have out there. So this one is the admin handbook. It has all of these are the administrative procedures that align with our policies that kind of dictate how we do different things, hiring processes, supervision, evaluation.
Pretty complete.
It's pretty thorough. And I don't think it got linked in, well, it didn't because this was published already, but our newest policy revision was the volunteer policy. And so I put together the required components for volunteer orientation and went over those today with the admin team, and Lynn linked it into the admin handbook, so that document is now there.
Thank you for bringing it forward.
Welcome.
You guys good?
Great.
Great. Okay. Alright, moving on to, we don't have any action items from our discussions. So, moving on to dates to remember.
Bedtime.
That is a soothing one. I like that.
Time to wake up.
That's a sleepy time alarm. That sounded like a lullaby. Alright, so policy committee meetings on this Thursday and next Thursday.
And then the board workshop on the 18th.
Board workshop next Wednesday at 6 o'clock.
It should be at Lakeland High School if they have availability.
Yes.
In the comments if they have
And in
availability.
LaFontaine, they've looked, and she said the date's good.
There's no events are open that night, but I can see.
In the comments, we can use the comments.
Well, that I don't have access to. I just know like and search that.
There, so if the comments isn't available,
Yeah,
Jim
we
is.
should be able to check. Like, I don't have full access to all to that, right?
Reserve
So,
it.
you know, there's no sporting events that night.
Reserve it. Facility use for.
Okay. Any input for future items from board members? No? Okay. And I will entertain a motion to go into executive session for Idaho Code 74-206 1B.
I move to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-206 1B.
Second.
Hearing a motion in a second, we need a roll call vote.
Trustee Jones?
Yes.
Vice Chair Bain?
Yes.
Chair Thompson?
Yes.
Trustee Quimby?
Yes.
Can we take a-
Is that our recess?
Yes, we can take a recess. 5 minutes. Out of executive session, the time is 9:15. Do we have any motions? I will move to approve admin's recommendation for the hire of the new facilities director, Tim Haig.
Second.
We have a motion. Oh, go ahead.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And it is 9:16 and meeting adjourned.
Bang the gavel.